Marty Olson, and welcome to another edition of City Focus. And
Where's
tonight,
your microphone, Marty?
it was on the. Oh boy,
Do you have it, or
I do. I
All
took
right.
it off to get the.
materials?
Thank you, and good evening. I'm Marty Olson, and welcome to City Focus. We have a little technological glitch to start, but we're up and running. So appreciate your perseverance with me. Tonight, I'm delighted to have for a guest an old friend, Mike Brown, who I've known for the better part of 25 years. And Mike was a longtime trainer at Millstone. And my introduction to Mike was when he was serving on the finance board for the City of New London back in the late 80s and early 90s, when I was serving on the New London City Council. And last week, Mike was a guest of his next-door neighbor to the Kiwanis Club, Erica Richardson, with a program which I found fascinating and I wanted to share with all of you. And that's regarding some curriculum for the New London Public Schools. And Mike, I'd like to kind of turn it over to you to have at it. And before we do get started, though, I want to mention, too, again, that we are live. So if you do have questions or comments or thoughts on the topic at hand, education generally does generate a little bit of a buzz. So fire away, and we can be reached at 860-440-3154 or at 800-253-2285. Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Marty, and thank you for inviting me. The topic today really deals with the magnet schools and the creation of the magnet schools here in the City of New London. And if I could, before we get into a slide program, we will be showing some slides, but if you've got calls, please do call in, because we can hold up the slides and answer your concerns. If you go back a number of years here in the City of New London, actually in the state of Connecticut, in Horton versus Meskel, at that point, Horton challenged the state of Connecticut in court, stating that the 7 cities in the state are by and large segregated. And in that capacity, through zoning, the cities have the low-income housing, attracted lower-income people, and as a result, the 7 cities have the lowest performing school systems in the state.
And with zoning, our neighbors in more affluent communities effectively have zoned low-income housing out.
Exactly. So that made its way all the way to the state Supreme Court, and the court ruled that, in fact, the 7 cities were segregated, and by the state constitution, which guarantees an equal right to education, they went ahead and ordered the state to fix the problem. The state threw a lot of money at it, and nothing came of it.
Meskel goes back to the 70s, so this is not a new problem.
No, this is not a new problem. This isn't emerging. A gentleman by the name of Sheffield then sued Governor O'Neill in Sheffield versus O'Neill, and pointed out that the resolution for Horton versus Meskel never worked, and the 7 cities are still segregated, and the school systems are the lowest performing school systems. New London in particular has gotten a lot of attention in recent months, with the state declaring New London a failed school system, and appointed a state special master, Dr. Adamowski, to oversee the transition of the New London school system into a functional operating system. Now, if we could go back a few years to an earlier time and an earlier situation, the state, when Dr. Collette was the superintendent here, basically came to the conclusion that with 40% of the city's property taxable only, it was unlikely that the city, in fact, could ever support its own school system. And Dr. Collette proposed at that time that we transition to an all-magnet school. This would be the only city in the state that has an all-magnet school. The importance there from a financial perspective, separate from what that means, is that we would end up with $3,000 subsidy per student in the school system by the state. All this in an effort to desegregate.
And with roughly, in round numbers, 3,000 students, that translates into an infusion of $9 million, a windfall of cash.
Not a windfall, but needed cash, nonetheless. The state now and the Board of Education, let me step back once again, and there has been major progress made at the high school with Tommy Thompson on some initiatives to raise the mastery scores here in the city, and some other progress that has been made. But once again, the state has deemed that to be not significant, at least not significant enough to make a difference. What I'm going to speak on is an issue of, we're looking at 4 basic paths, 4 magnet schools going from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. So students would be channeled in one of 4 paths. One of those paths is an arts program, looking to combine possibly the Gard Theater with the Isaac School, and going forward to create a music and entertainment education program through the arts.
Are you referring at the high school level now, middle school,
All the way up.
elementary, or K through 12?
K through 12. It will be the only program of its kind in the country. I've had other discussions with Dr. Adamowski about including Eugene O'Neill Theater for playwright capability, and the Sonolis facilities, which has sound stages and is a tremendous asset in our area. So that's kind of where we're heading to on that program. The science and technology is another path. We already have a science and technology high school in a magnet system, and we would create the K through 12 to support that whole program. And so that would be the second magnet path.
Yeah, now, just for a little background too, we have constructed a new elementary magnet school, Winthrop School, which is geared toward math and science.
Right, and that would feed into the eventually into the science and technology program.
And the new Nathan Hale School, which is under construction, is going to be more arts and things of that nature.
Exactly.
And the new Jennings School, which is up and running, is currently not a magnet school, but it's kind of a dual language facility, I understand.
The intention, and where we've had discussions and what I have advocated for the city, is basically a school for international commerce. We live in a global economy today. You can't go into Walmarts and find very much that's made in America. If you look at our ports, if you look at the state of Connecticut, we make jet engines, we have Pfizer, we have many companies that are on a global level, but we do nothing to prepare the students in New London for the global economy or for jobs in the global economy. And we will be in a global economy going forward. So the question is, what can we do K through 12? And that's where I'd like to get into the slide program a little bit, if that's all right with you.
That's fine by me, folks.
All right. So this here first slide, if we could. I'm trying to get it up. There we go. We're really going to talk today about a strategy to prepare New London, Connecticut students to compete for jobs in a global economy. There is a subset of this in Norwalk. This goes beyond the Norwalk model. And if I could take you to the next slide here. If you look at this, our share of the world economy is a little bit, as you can see, we only represent 20%. There is other emerging areas, certainly in Latin America, which we haven't developed yet, a real economy. It's evolving, and especially in Brazil and India, China. So we really need to take a look at how we could raise the performance of New London students so they could deal with China or Brazil or Argentina, where the new pope comes from. These are emerging nations.
And you're not putting the genie back in the bottle. The global economy is here, and it
won't go away.
It's growing. It's not It's not regressing, it's expanding every day.
Exactly. It is growing, and you could see this in every single product that we deal with today. Here's a photograph I managed to pull off the web, and it's of the Port of New London. And as you can see, the lumber that's stacked up there is from the Schweiger sawmills, which are located outside of Munich, Germany. So we import lumber from Germany to the Port of New London. That should be telling right there. Let me take you to the next slide. This slide deals with two things. One, it talks about the Connecticut Deepwater Port Strategy Study. And if you read in the Day, just recently, the state just announced they're awarding $5.8 million to take the next step to study the Port of New London, to expand our warehousing and to expand State Pier to 1,000 feet, and looking at the Port of New London in general.
Expand its use.
Expand the use so we have greater laydown area, better capability to bring in different products. And once again, the state says, the activity account for really today more than $5 billion in business. On the bottom part of the slide is something that most people would scratch their head, and it's really a bar graph that shows in 2008 we did an extensive amount of business with Thailand. So in one breath, I showed you some lumber from Germany. We do business from Thailand, but yet we don't prepare our students to figure out how imports, exports, how International Monetary Fund, foreign currencies, or anything else really works.
Language, culture?
We're going to be getting there, exactly. This next slide points out that our Port of New London is really managed by a Canadian firm, Logistec, talking about a global economy again. And the second thing is Phelps Dodge, which is right up here in Norwich, had been importing through the Port of New London copper from the Congo. So you may not believe that we're in the center of a global economy here in New London, but we are, once again. Let me show you this particular slide here, and this is from none other than Pfizer's. And what's remarkable about this slide is it connects Groton, New London, with Shanghai, Tokyo, Singapore. We are part of the global economy. And as such, a lot could be derived from why haven't we done something with this, and why haven't we done something with our students to prepare them for this world that we're in today? We're talking now about a magnet school which translates into, starts off at the elementary school to teach languages. And we're talking about possibly Mandarin, the Chinese language, which is dominant in the Pacific Rim. We could be teaching Spanish for the Latin American market, maybe Indian, German. We need to decide what languages, but the idea here is a student going to Jennings should come out of Jennings after elementary school speaking the language, speaking it, with the intention that when they get to the junior high, they will be able to learn some of their courses in the language that they've learned, so they get fluent. That would give our students a competitive edge over just about any student in the state of Connecticut, if nothing else as a translator. So there is great opportunity if we could get students to be proficient, both in English and, let me just make it clear that the core courses that the state mandates in English and in science and math would be taught across all the magnet schools. These are the electives beyond the core courses. So nothing will change in that particular area. So people need to start thinking differently about the New London school system and where it needs to go to prepare for really the future state.
You know, as you're discussing this, and I'm fascinated by this, I think it's a out-of-the-box idea here in New London. Have you had conversations with Dr. Adamowski or Dr. Fisher, the superintendent of schools, about this, and how have they responded to your idea here?
I have taken the time to meet with Dr. Adamowski, as well as Ms. Curtin, the president of the Board of Education. I presented these same slides to the Board of Education. I've met with the mayor, Mr. Finizio, and discussed this as well with him. Certainly, Dr. Adamowski, who is the special master, has been supportive. The Board of Education has not been committal because they have not taken up the larger roles of the schools yet, and I'm hopeful that that's going to take place in the near term.
Because, I mean, at the moment, with the presence of Dr. Adamowski, I mean, he has extraordinary powers at the moment with our school system.
Yes, he's been granted by the legislature and the Commission of Education extreme powers to modify the school, modify how things are organized and how things are taught. There's a lot of discussion in the paper, and just stepping back, that the city has not, in fact, raised the budget for the Board of Education in recent years. And that may be true, but it's also misleading, because, in fact, as we built a new Nathan Hale, a Jennings, a Winthrop, all of those had to be bonded. And the bonding for those schools, largely paid for by the state, but about 5 to 10% of it by the taxpayers of New London, shows up in the city budget, not in the Board of Education budget. So yes, we've invested heavily in the tune of millions of dollars. It just doesn't show up in the Board of Education budget, but it's very real, and you see that in your taxes. We need to be a little bit more forthright about that.
But in that same vein, regarding the elementary magnet schools, the discussion of the magnet school district, it appears to me that the state is committed to this magnet school concept.
Yes, it is.
The state is, and
the city is also.
Well, they haven't voted on it yet, but that may be
They
a
in
fait
fact voted
accompli.
on it when they accepted the funds to convert the elementary schools to magnets.
And that was done a number of years ago.
Right, under Dr. Collette.
And my point being is that to analogize in the private sector with the banking system, the state's got so much invested here that it's too big to fail. I mean, they've got a vested interest in seeing some success here.
And hence the reason that they've asked Dr. Adamowski to serve as the special master. He's certainly extremely qualified and seems to have an excellent handle on the limitations and capabilities of the city school system. So moving on in the slides, if I could.
Sure.
Really,
I'll tell you what, before we get too far, we got a call here. Let's go to the
All right.
phones first.
Please, go ahead.
Good evening, and you're on the air.
Yes, hi. I'm curious about Buckley School. How come you haven't mentioned that? Is that going to be a magnet school also? We spent an awful lot of money there.
At which school?
Buckley.
At Buckley. That is a magnet school run by Project Learn. It's outside of the New London Public School System.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, I'm sick. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for the call.
If we could go back to the slide now, what we're trying to do is transition a mindset also of New London. With an international school of commerce here in the city, people will look differently. All we've produced over the year is a lot of athletes in the school system, and that's been our claim to fame. And we really need to be educating and promoting jobs that will, and promoting skills that will allow them to enter college or go out into the workforce and secure real work. So part of this effort is to take New London from what it is today and move it into a broader concept of this is a pretty sophisticated school system here, and really something that we could rally around as a community and as a school system, as a council, and be very proud of. And that's kind of where we would like to go. Let me just, here's at the high school level, and I just want to spend a few minutes here. Once a person comes up through the elementaries with a language already behind them, and we're ready to teach the core courses that will prepare them for college or jobs in the marketplace, and really understanding the forces that drive modern economic globalization and how it affects their lives. Looking at the import-export banks, the international monetary funds, international currencies, learning how multilateral and bilateral agreements basically form businesses. I looked at a product, medical problem I got from CVS yesterday, and it said it was an Italian product manufactured in Mexico, imported by Richfield, Connecticut company. You know what I mean? You got 3 countries tied into one product, an off-the-shelf product from
No, the opportunities
CVS.
are extraordinary, and understanding cultures around the world. Because when you're dealing in international business and commerce, it's important to understand who you're doing business with and how they do business. And not every country does business the way we do business. And we have to be prepared to go in and be able to negotiate and understand. You mentioned at the top of the program, China. I mean, there's a country that's 5,000 years old. Our country's 225 years old. We're accustomed to things happening quick, and they have a much more measured pace. For instance,
They also have a lot more people.
they have a lot more people.
To deal with. And what we're looking at in this particular case, Marty Olson and I, in a previous life many years ago, it was the end of the Cold War, and we were looking to develop opportunities here in New London. And one of the opportunities we went out and actually accomplished was getting New London designated as a foreign trade zone. And what that would allow us to do would be to import products into the Port of New London, manufacture them here in southeastern Connecticut, and send them out and never pay a tariff, which would make those products extremely, extremely competitive in the world market. It took us 2 years to get that through the Department of Commerce. The city appointed a Foreign Trade Zone Commission, and unfortunately nobody understood, this is what we're talking about, how to run a foreign trade zone or what to do with it. We had companies here in southeastern Connecticut that could benefit from that. A company in Niantic that made gauze and textiles are extremely highly
Carlisle,
tariffed.
I think.
I don't know, recall the name, but they wanted to participate. We looked at automobile parts and bringing it in. The state itself, in looking at the $5.8 million study that they just commissioned, was talking about automobiles. We were looking to manufacture those at the Waterford Airport and across from the Waterford Airport in the land owned by the state. So there was lots of opportunity. The problem, we lost that whole thing because there was nobody who understood globalization, international commerce, tariffs, how to import, export products, and that was really a shame. And it's a clear case
but those
where
designations are still in place. They're still not being fully utilized.
right, we have lots of opportunity. We got to train the next generation, New London students, to lead this whole effort. We got companies like Pratt & Whitney that sell jet engines all over the world. There are lots of Connecticut companies that sell product all over the world and import product all over the world. So we need to go on with that type of thing. One of the areas which has concerned me quite a bit, and it comes from a lot of watching what goes on with the police station, with the recent job on the city piers, looking at the construction of Jennings. We don't manage projects very well. We don't have the expertise in our city government as project managers, and certainly not at the school level. So one of my big concerns is who's going to lead this effort? And let me step back. We talk about the 4 schools, but there's a 5th one in that the Board of Education is really talking about reactivating Harbor School. Really, we expend today $6.5 million outsourcing special ed kids, and the idea would be to bring that all back into the city.
We're also talking about like an advanced placement school at the Renzulli School, also housed at Harbor School.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got another call, Mike. Good evening, and you're on the air.
Good evening, Marty, and nice to speak to Mr. Brown for all these years. I was in. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Please continue.
Okay. I was in his comment about people, in organizations not understanding their role. I recently had somebody from the Port Authority asking me why he wasn't allowed to go down to the state pier and go in there without identification. And since he was on the Port Authority, he should have access to the state pier. And having been a guard down here, I tried to explain to him it's a security zone. You just pop down there without being asked or establishing who you are. The authority, unfortunately, has authority over the state pier. And by the way, there's no more lumber there. They haven't had lumber for a couple of years now.
We understand that.
There's no market in lumber here. Well, right now they're processing steel bars, sheet steel that's used for tin cans. It's unfortunate state pier isn't in our economy here in New London. It's unfortunate that the city of New London doesn't operate the state pier, and I don't know where we missed the boat up at, pun intended. But we certainly do have a lot of potential here, but it seems to be always that we don't understand our potential, and the people on commission don't understand the potential. I don't know through that lifetime, but I know I've worked at it, and you two have, and it's nice to talk to Mr. Brown again. We go way back. I don't think probably remembers, but I remember him on the old finance board, and I do look back and enjoy the.
It looks like we lost our.
Well, a few things on State Pier. Certainly the state owns the property there. So
There's a reason why it's called State Pier.
Right, and it's been State Pier for a while. But nonetheless, the point is very well brought to bear. And the state uses city land to basically house its warehousing and other stuff over the years. There was, originally when the Fulton was there, many, many years ago, there was houses up in that area, and that's been since taken and understood. The state, if I recall, put about $40 million into rebuilding that pier when it was collapsing, and that certainly gives them another right to the pier. And the current study of $5.8 million goes beyond just State Pier, and
Well, the state has also just recently commissioned a study of all the deep water ports, which includes New Haven and Bridgeport, and New London.
Right, and the steel business is a consolidation by Logistec to make everything happen here for now. With the economy turning, lumber could come back, other products could come back. And really the $5.8 million studies to determine what type of warehousing, what type of products we should actually bring into the Port of New London. And they're also looking at the adjoining properties where the fishing fleet is and what needs it. There's a lot of ledge under some of that, so we're limited by the ledge that exists in the water there. But we need to welcome that study. We need to look at better warehousing, better storage. Different products could be held inside warehouses.
But, you know, in regards to the International School of Commerce, this is preparing young people for work, not just in New London, but around the world, in any capacity that interacts in that global economy. I mean, you mentioned it could be as a translator working who knows where.
A translator, an embassy, at any type of job, at purchasing for companies. At one time, we looked at
negotiating.
pharmaceuticals with Russia and other issues. There is lots of opportunity. We have a global economy. Products are imported, products are exported. We need to exploit those, but we need to have young people brought in who even know those jobs exist. If you ask the average student in New London what is imported or exported or how that happens, they wouldn't have a clue today. So why would they think about taking a job in that field? They need to be, if they were trained for K through 12, they would naturally look to go to university and get their degrees. You know, these programs are taught at great schools like Georgetown and other universities in the country that teach globalization and how to trade and how to make the international market work. So these people would be in demand. We really need to start teaching young people for the jobs of tomorrow in today's market.
I agree.
And, you know, going back to the slides if we could, really the issue is around project management. And if we don't manage this well, it's going to be another peer problem, another police station problem, another problem like we've had on many of our projects. And we don't have real project managers. My recommendation to the school system is they reach out in community and get volunteers who have serious leadership skills and serious project management skills. We have, you know, people in the community who have served in those capacities at Pfizer's or in the Navy or other jobs, and they're retired, they live here, and they'd be glad to donate their time to lead this effort. And each one of the schools, the Renzulli program, the other ones, need to basically have a project leader. And this is what I envision. It's a serious risk to the city because it will fail like a lot of our others if we don't have these skill sets. And you need to develop a strategic plan, a budget to facilitate the implementation, an integration plan so we don't have 5 different directions, each program going off in its own direction. They got to be able to come back together. A human resource plan dealing with the contractual issues with the teachers, unions and stuff. We need facility plan to accommodate, you know, the students coming from out of the district into the district and that. How are we going to select students for each of the programs? And a transition plan to get us from where we are today to where we got to go. And more important, a communication plan. We don't do a good job communicating with anybody on any major project in this city.
Yeah. Well, when you mention the human resources component, I mean, are you looking at this emanating out of the schools or out of the city? And I don't want to come across as a wise guy here, but I mean, the city appears to be dismantling its personnel office into a being run out of the mayor's office.
Right, and the mayor would not have jurisdiction over the school system as it doesn't anyways on the contracts. But the contracts would be needed to be basically rearranged to facilitate a magnet school, the languages, the skill sets that would be required. The teaching, we heard a presentation on the Gifted Children's Program this last week here in the Renzulli program, and that predominantly, that grant from the University of Connecticut is really to train the teachers. It's not really to implement the programs, to train the teachers. And so there's a lot that's got to be done. Who is going to coordinate that? When is that going to happen? How's that being budgeted? How's the state money coming into these things? We also need to convert the high school, besides for the roofs leaking, the swimming pool not working, and they need to be basically configured. We commissioned a study of the middle school. How is all of this being, who's running this? You know, we don't know, and certainly the board doesn't know because it doesn't discuss anything remotely like this at this time. Is it the special master? We need to look at this a lot closer.
So one of the things that I find a bit disconcerting regarding the magnet school concept as it's currently being proposed is how is this infusion of money going to be spent? And the concept that I think needs to be moved to the head of the list is student achievement. And discussions with the superintendent and listening to the special master don't lend me to believe that that's the case, that they're...
I think, in all honesty, Marty, some progress has been made on academics that is nowhere near, or we wouldn't have a special master, and the state wouldn't have declared the school system failed. Certainly, Tommy Thompson has done a lot in the summer school program around reading and has shown significant progress in the reading side. We also have other progress being made in the school system. At one time, we virtually had no requirements for academics for sports. It's been raised to 1.7, which is still abysmal, and it's going to go to 2.0 this next year. In order to facilitate that, Connecticut College actually came to the rescue in a program teaming their athletes with our athletes to tutor them, to bring them along so they could get to the 1.7. And most of the students rose to that. I think we had a half a dozen students who could not meet that threshold for athletic programs in the school. So we are making some progress. By no means are we making great progress.
Okay, well, let's continue with your program here.
All right. The next thing is really a diversion from this, but not really a diversion. It's another program which I tend to work with, and that's the 7th Regiment. 7th Regiment is a drum and bugle corps that was formed here in 2000, resident in New London. These members of the corps practice at the middle school on weekends. They come from, basically they report Fridays and they go home Sunday nights. They sleep in the school and practice. 7th Regiment is ranked right now 5th in the world. It's a very skilled program. Students who are in the program spend about 1,000 hours a year in the program, and they have 13 degreed music teachers on staff, which is far more than most of the cities around us together have.
It's almost like a full-time job, 1,000 hours.
It is, because of the summer programs, the weekend programs, a lot goes into that. So let me take you a little bit, and how this ties in with our art school is really what I've been talking to the Board of Ed on. I got 2 or 3 pictures just of 7th Regiment. These were taken at the Lucas Field in Indianapolis.
That's the indoor dome stadium there.
It's a dome stadium, yeah, at the championships. And so it's a very disciplined, structured program, and which really, it focuses on music, and it uses music simply as a tool to develop the skills of personal leadership, discipline, the importance of goals, teamwork, integrity, those type of things. And the mission of the 7th Regiment, and the reason I'm tying this is we've talked to the Board of Ed that 7th Regiment would like to lend assistance in some fashion to the arts program if it's possible. They're not looking for money from the school system. They're not looking for sponsorship from the school system. They're just looking to lend their expertise in some way to advance the arts program here in the city.
Isn't that what the Isaac School is all about? Arts and things of that?
That's why it's a fusion of the New London school system with Isaac, with the Guard, hopefully Eugene O'Neill, and Sonolis, to bring a real arts program to life here in the city. And really, as I said, the 7th Regiment has 13 degreed music educators. They have 10 technicians. They have, right now, 85 members. And they really are a very advanced program. It's really a center of excellence within the city, which for whatever reason, people don't know it exists within here.
Didn't this spawn from the old
Surfers.
Surfers from
Yeah,
the
and the people who were in Surfers run the 7th Regiment today. So it's a growth of that type of thing. There's also a lot of alumni from 7th Regiment itself, not even going back to Surfers. They currently have 3 alumni at UConn studying music education, 1 at UMass, 1 at Connecticut College, 1 at the Hart School of Music. So we're producing a lot of music educators along the way also. And we have other people, a lot of the students that participate in the program go on to college. About 60%, 70% seek college education. We got 2 at the Coast Guard Academy right now, and that. And once again, we're not seeking sponsorship. We're not seeking out transportation. We're not seeking anything from the city. Looking to give back to the city in some way and
You've got
facilitate.
an asset and you'd like to help.
In some way, and I don't know how we could facilitate that, but we're open to that discussion. And really, that kind of concludes the slides. So I'd like to talk more with you about our education system and where it's going. And we've got, because of the new city charter, unfortunately, the tenure of the Board of Education is only 2 years.
And everybody runs at the same time, so it does not lend itself to smooth transitions. I mean, it could be rather...
Well, the council doesn't re-elect every 2 years.
well, there are elections every 2 years.
Do the council elect every 2 years?
Yes.
Now? I'm sorry, I'm not.
Mayor's 4 years, the new mayor.
I'm sorry, that's what I was distracted with. The difficulty with a 2-year term is by the time you get a new council to sit, it's time for the council to get out or run for re-election. When you're looking at a program such as we're looking at, you need some continuity. And I don't know if we need a different structure where they serve for 4 years, but it's staggered or something like that.
Yeah.
where
This
you're
is something that
rotating.
Dr. Adamowski has broached publicly, that he's just, the current system does not lend itself to what you're suggesting here.
Right, it doesn't, and the problem is with a 2-year term, they're just coming on, they're learning the Board of Education, they're learning the budget process, and they leave. And we need to be much more focused around what it's going to take and how we maintain a certain continuity on the various boards. And, you know, in the old days in Board of Finance, you staggered the replacement over years, and you really need to do something similar here.
Yep.
With the Board of Education.
Yeah, well, folks, I just want to mention too that we're live tonight, and if you'd like to call in and offer your thoughts on the presentation that Mike has made regarding the concept of an international school of commerce, please call locally. We're at 860-440-3154, or if you're out of the area, you can contact us at 1-800-253-2285. I've been finding the topic fascinating in some areas that I don't recall hearing you delve into, but I think might blend into what you're offering, would be perhaps a more aggressive international foreign exchange student program, where we would send students out of the country.
That'd be awesome if we could do something
and
like
accept
that.
students in as well.
We have done some of that with Italy this past year, and we really would need to expand that in the countries of the languages that these students are in fact using. I was just in Iowa, and a young man who, where I was working in Iowa, his son went off to Belgium for 6 months to study in Belgium. He's proficient in French, and certainly would gain a lot of insight in that process. We could do a lot with this program, and we need to do a lot, and we need to get the community directly involved and supportive. The board needs to do a lot more. I have quite a bit of disagreement with Dr. Fisher on this in marketing what they're doing, how they're doing it, and the need to get out there and really bring the community in. And they'll say, well, we got parents who are in the school system, and that's great, and they're very good.
You want to build this, it requires a community-based support. Because everything, the success of our educational system is acutely tied to everything else in the community, as far as our tax base, property values. We all have a vested interest in success.
Right, and it's really the role of the superintendent to rally the community, and I don't see that happening. And it needs to go beyond just the student population and their parents. It really needs to go to the business community, to the council. There needs to be a unified focus on what we want to achieve, how the goals are, and most important, how we're going to measure success.
Yeah.
What is the timelines? What are the goals? How are we going to measure? How are we going to hold people accountable to those goals?
Absolutely. But the promotion of the district will be, in my humble opinion, student success. Because if we're doing a good job educating, people will want to be here. They'll want to send their children to this district. Trying to do some sort of dog and pony show and bring it out to the surrounding communities and selling the district, parents are going to want to know, as you point out, the results.
Well, there needs to be a selling at every level on a continuous basis. For the most part, I don't know if the public has been invited to. I was out of state, so to the opening of the various schools, the Jennings, and it needs to be open continuously. And we need to have a clear path, going forward. We tend to build these mausoleums, and they sit up on a hill, but don't necessarily bring on the emotion, the pride. And by the city, we haven't had a swimming pool that operated in the city for years. We certainly have a football field, but we don't have an operating swimming pool. We don't have roofs that don't leak in the city. We don't have an ADA capability in the school system, and how could that be?
As a guy who played football, I will say that I have to admit I'm pleased with the new fields, and many of that was initiated before some of these other problems have risen to the surface. And as far as the pool goes, I also was on the swim team, and I think it's ought to be required for New London students.
It ought to be available for New London taxpayers.
Well, yes, but New London students to graduate ought to learn how to swim. I mean, for their own safety.
It just...
They'll be on a waterfront community and not swim. That, to me, is unconscionable.
Well, I don't understand how we have not rallied. If we could rally the community to build a football field, we could rally them to fix a pool. And it really takes leadership within the school system and bring the focus. My problem, and I could talk about from my own experience with the new football fields, is 7th Regiment can't get onto those fields because they want $75 an hour fee to use the football field. So a New London-based program can't afford that, so they don't use the field, ever. Ever.
Now, the year I served as mayor, I went up to the high school, and the 7th Regiment did a...
And they paid the fees that day.
All right. Well,
that was the one and only time they've used that new field.
And I was duly impressed with the...
And the problem with that is if the taxpayers are paying for the asset, whether it's the pool or the schools, it should be available to the taxpayers. And it should enlist the support of the taxpayers into this effort. So, I've got issues if we're going to build mausoleums. We need to think about how we rally a community around that mausoleum.
And it's not just the fields. The issue of access even into the schools themselves for after-school programs. Dr. Fisher has indicated that the schools are available, but the fee structure is such that it shuts a lot of organizations out.
Exactly. So that's kind of where we're sitting today, and you would like to see a lot more done with that, you know?
Yep.
So wrapping this up in a certain way, you know, I see great opportunity. I urge the public to get out to the Board of Education. They're looking at the 4 different programs, and with the now the need to keep the Harbor School open.
Yeah, that's a new revelation.
That's
that,
a brand new revelation a couple weeks ago, where Dr. Adamowski made it clear that we cannot return that if we want to bring the $6.5 million back into the community that we're sending out right now.
Yeah,
So-
and the Renzulli program, if they adopt that, that also needs a home.
That is true. It needs a home, and interesting enough, the Parents and Teachers Organization was not supportive of that. You know, the PTO, or what its official name is, and the reason is they think we've got to deal with the average student first and get all the programs settled out before we start dealing with gifted only. And that it's a diversion from the attention that's required on a daily basis to get just our programs to where they're deemed by the state satisfactory.
I don't know. I am not totally familiar with Renzulli. As I look at it on the surface, it looks to me like something we ought to be looking at exceptionally, very, very carefully before rejecting it out of hand. I'll say that.
Well, I don't know if it needs to be rejected. I don't think the parents' organization is rejecting it. They just say we've been declared a failed school system. We got a lot of work to do, spade work to do with the bulk of our students, and that focusing on the gifted program would be a diversion in attention. You know, and that's really
Well,
the
we'll see.
problem.
Folks, we are winding down. We've only got about 3 or 4 minutes left in the program. There's still enough time if you'd like to participate and call in. Please do. We're at 860-440-3154 or at 800-253-2285. Again, I'm Marty Olson. We're on City Focus, and I'm joined tonight by Michael Brown, who's got, I think, a very invigorating proposal for our proposed magnet school district for a international school of commerce. And we've been discussing that primarily through the bulk of our hour tonight, and I think it's been an engaging conversation.
Thank you. We presented this same program to the Kiwanis, and were amazed by 2 things: the lack of knowledge of what's really going on with the magnet schools, and then a lot of questions on this particular program and how it would work. So I think if you reach out to the community, there is a real interest in supporting the advancement of our school systems.
Absolutely. I mean, the community wants success. I mean, we certainly have been beaten back with a lot of negativity, and I think the community's ripe for positive movement.
Right, and Dr. Adamowski himself would like us to put him out of business. So, you know, so he looks forward to the day when he can return to the state and get out of trying to mend New London.
Very good. Well, Michael, we've got 1 minute. Are there any parting thoughts or shots you'd like to take?
Get out there and support this, and not this program, your own, but get out, learn what's happening, and make it really happen here in the city, you know?
Well, I want to thank you for taking
Thank
the
you.
time to come on the program tonight. And
Appreciate the offer.
I will point out I'll be delivering this copy of this program to the Scope magazine. Ian Thomas was on last week, who's the publisher of the Scope. So if you would like to watch this, or perhaps maybe some of your friends may like to catch up with it at a later time, you can watch that on the Scope after Ian gets that up and running. And with that, I want to thank Mike for
Thank
coming
you.
on, and always a pleasure, Mike.
Thank you, sir.
Good night.
Good night.